This is a First Coast News on your side special report, Tracking Debby.
Good evening, folks. I am meteorologist Ross Mumal, joined by the real big guns here, our chief meteorologist Tim Deegan.
Big guns. What are you talking about?
I bring the muscle, he brings the speed, right? The runner. But we want to give you the latest update on Tropical Storm Debby. 8 p.m. advisory just came out. She continues to weaken. Winds now, sustained winds, I should say, down to 45 miles per hour, Tim.
For those who care, Jacksonville is now on the, I suspect there's people around the world who watch the advisories, right?
Yeah.
And right now they're saying that their National Hurricane Center is using the fact that Jacksonville is 50 miles to the east-southeast of the center of the tropical storm. So I think we both agree that although we've had pretty confident about the next 24 to 36 hours for the last 24 hours still, because there were so many ifs earlier, it's nice to see that it in fact is still moving. Not fast, but it's still moving off to the northeast or maybe east-northeast at about 6.
It hasn't completely stalled over us
Yes,
yet.
Right, exactly. And that was obviously a concern. It's going to be interesting to see if it in fact stalls here. Hopefully not here, but it does look like it's more on the move.
Yeah, especially at the, Thursday, Friday, and then into the weekend. There was a lot of ifs about where this thing was going to go. And I feel, you said it earlier, we're pretty confident on at least getting it to about there on Wednesday.
Which is about 24 to 36 hours. And then, but that's, I mean, we care about these folks, but that's going to be their issue.
And that's kind of shown in the cone. Once you get past, middle of the afternoon on Wednesday, the cone expands. It could go the whole way up into Columbia, the whole way up to Raleigh, Roanoke, Norfolk. So there's going to be a lot of variation in where it tracks once it does finally clear the first coast later on.
I think at the very least, for those of you, even if you don't have friends or loved ones up here, but if you have travel plans up I-95, you can see why you might want to take a different route much of this week.
Yeah. All right, so that's the latest cone. Here's what the current radar looks like right now. Heaviest of the action is now finally moving out of some of the hardest hit areas. Columbia County, western Baker County, they've seen 9, 10 inches, even a foot of rain in some locations. I believe Suwannee County, just west of Lake City, had 2 water rescues.
Yeah, I mean, we've
seen,
I think, estimated anyhow 15 to 16 inches.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Of course, the center came ashore. There's Cedar Key. The center came ashore right about there. And this satellite or radar shows the heaviest rains and pretty much the strongest winds are off to the east and to the northeast of the center. Now, and you can see the center right about
moving
there.
Moving into the Okefenokee right there.
So I guess I want to point out, because I know we're going to emphasize where the heaviest rains and winds are, there are still, and so that means tomorrow, for those of you that when we're off to the southwest of this, there's still some showery and gusty winds, but the weather we're most concerned about is really off to the east and to the northeast.
Yeah, so heaviest bands there again, starting to move actually out of the Okefenokees, Nassau County, northern half of Duval County, Glenn, Camden, and then still kind of up into southeast Georgia. Most of that's starting to move north of Brantley, Pierce, Ware County. So that's good news. Waycross getting a little bit of a break.
Yeah, you're right. And that'll be interesting to see. There's going to be some wraparound showers, but it does look like, because we were giving Waycross some pretty high totals, but it does look like this supports the idea that really the highlighted counties, Camden and Glenn, Nassau County, still several more hours. Still heavy rains over Doppler. I mean, we could do some thinking out loud. In my mind, you can almost do math. You can say Duval's, about 25 to 30 miles wide? Yeah. And this is moving at 6 miles an hour. So it might be another 3 to 4 hours before this heavy stuff gets out of eastern Duval, but obviously ending over the next hour or two in western Duval.
And we'll look at Futurecast then, but really this has now become a north of I-10 event for the most part. We'll have some isolated showers and maybe, a stray downpour here or there south of I-10 across Clay and St. Johns County. But for the most part, it's going to be north of Interstate 10 here over really the next 24, 36 hours.
We're going to get into a county by county, right?
Yeah, okay. We'll break that down completely here. I just want to update people. Flash flood warning, I believe this is still in effect until 9:45, I believe, for portions of Columbia and Baker County. And they did have a flash flood emergency. That ended just about 15, 20 minutes ago or so for a large portion of Lake City and Columbia County for some of that rain that we discussed earlier. So the heaviest rain now out of there. They're only going to see a little bit more, just kind of some stray, showers and light rain and things like that. But all those small creeks all the small streams, they're going to feed into some of those bigger rivers. So
right.
still could see some of those rivers continue to crest after the rain has now ended.
Right. Well, in fact, here you can see the flood warning on the Swanee.
Yep.
And then that'll go for all the other rivers as well. I guess I just want to do a little comparison looking at this radar to summer. So these are heavy rains, but this really is, for the most part, an accumulative affecting. For instance, in Duval, I don't think most of this is any heavier than about 1 inch an hour.
I would agree.
So it adds up, but that's compared to in summer we can get 3 inches per hour, right?
Yeah.
Now I think some of this might be closer to 2 inches per hour. But like you said, Ross, over northern St. John's and northern Clay County, still some showers, but really the heavy stuff coming to an end.
Yeah. So again, this is mainly northern Duval, Nassau, Glen, Camden County. So this is going to be the area that we're watching for the heaviest rainfall totals over about the next day or so. So I said kind of earlier, Tim, kind of think of it like a triangle from Brunswick down over to Folkston and then up to at least Nahunta, if not over to Waycross, kind of the area we're zoning in on.
Right, exactly.
Plus the coastal area.
Especially overnight tonight.
Yeah.
And then you know, we could probably move it to really Camden and Glen by tomorrow morning.
I think I have next up the rain totals. Yeah, so this is radar estimated, so it's not exact, but Tim, you mentioned that bullseye there.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yep. That's a lot of rain. I mean, you can really paint where the eye came ashore, and you can really see what's left of the core heading, and look at that rainfall axis heading off to the east and to the northeast. So for what we call the big 4 counties, which is where 90% of us live, Nassau, Duval, St. John's, and Clay, notice near the coast, not even quite 1 inch of rain. As you get up toward Fernandina, 2 inches. Duval, as you get up north and west, 3, 4, probably up to 5 inches.
Yeah.
Western Duval. Nassau County. So yeah, you folks, and there's more to come. So I wouldn't be surprised if in Nassau County, maybe might get some 8 to 10 inch totals.
Yeah, I think there were some isolated totals, especially in Western Duval and then into Baker, that were like 7 to 8, 9 inches once you kind of zoomed in on it. So yeah, I'm sure Western Nassau County is going to start to get up pretty high.
So I do want to note, we're going to talk a little bit more about Clay County, but notice you folks in Clay County, so although the Black Creek goes into the St. John's, the North Fork and the South Fork are fed by what happens here. And notice they've had 4, 5, maybe 6 inches of rain. Certainly Black Creek has had heavier rains than that, but still that's pouring into those forks. So keep a close watch on the forecast. Both those forks are coming up.
All right, and this is kind of what we're looking ahead to. So you kind of mentioned it, from Savannah the whole way up through Myrtle Beach, Charleston, that's where the bullseye for rainfall is soon going to be. But we had said kind of north of I-10 for heaviest rain. So I think a few isolated showers and light rain for Flagler, St. John's, Putnam, even down towards Gainesville, Union, Bradford even. But most of this is now going to become a Southeast Georgia event.
Right, because remember folks, everything is pretty much slowly, but pretty much moving like this.
Yeah, and so that is why the Weather Prediction Center has updated this for Tuesday. Moderate to high risk for excessive rainfall, potential flooding for a lot of those areas. Northern Duval, Nassau, Glen, Camden, and a few of our Southeast Georgia counties up there near Nahunta and Waycross.
And I think for Duval, this is primarily what we get into maybe midnight to 3 in the morning.
Yes.
I mean, if it goes as forecast, there shouldn't be much additional heavy rain in northern Duval daytime tomorrow, I wouldn't think.
Well, and we'll look at some of the, some of the forecast models. You'll see that once it kind of loops around, some of them do bring in just some northwestern clippers on the northern side of the county here.
Yeah,
so.
and to me that's going to be interesting to see if that actually happens. But like you said, clippers, at least it won't be steady accumulative rain like we're getting off to the east and to the northeast of the core. Yeah,
most of the heaviest bands have moved rather quickly.
Yeah.
For the most part. So this is through the remainder of this evening, 9:30 up until 11:30. So you had said about 2-3 hours for that heaviest swath of rain that's here right now to continue to move through and start to push offshore.
Now some folks are wondering about tornadoes. There's not a tornado watch in effect for any portion of northeast Florida or southeastern Georgia. If one or two might spin up, we think would be with this band as it goes overnight tonight. So we'll keep a close watch, especially for Camden and Glen County as we go through the night.
Now, what do you think about for the Tuesday morning commute?
I don't think the tornado threat is there for us. I think it's primarily Savannah North, and I think gusty winds and passing showers. So compared to this morning, much better.
Yeah. And here's kind of a look at some of that wraparound effect. I had mentioned, I guess, the clipper. I don't know if that's probably maybe the best way to say it.
But still, yeah, they're clipping on through.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how heavy those totals are. I would suspect they're going to be a lot lighter than what we have been seeing.
Yeah.
On the southern and western side of that low.
Well, because we've been saying, you know, about 5 to 10 more inches up here. Brunswick, south could see another 10 to 15. Yeah, if some of these bands are a little lighter, it'll certainly impact how much rain we might continue to see.
Well, look, so this is Tuesday afternoon, folks. So again, can you see that? Here's the circulation center. So all those showers wrapping around, there will be some drier air coming in, whereas the real tropical flow coming off the warm Atlantic and the Gulf Stream is pretty much going to be Savannah and then working up through the Carolinas.
Now, with some daytime heating, do you expect a little bit of some enhancement with some of those once they come in?
I'm curious about that, but
especially if we get, well, I mean, you look across the southern half of the viewing area.
A lot of sun.
Yeah, potentially.
But notice the flow out of the west to northwest. So, you know, I'm debating with myself, am I hope casting, right?
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if even this is not going to be quite as much as what this is showing. Now,
so you're thinking it might be overdoing it a little bit?
I think maybe a little bit. But, you know, am I hope casting?
I mean, I think we all hope it's lesser than what it might show.
Of course.
Except maybe the folks down in
now,
like
see,
Flagler Beach,
I think this has more support
once it gets out over the
because
Gulf
this is
Stream.
all over warmer water.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if some cooler, drier air might come into this, and there's just not any heating. So I guess what I'm really wondering is meteorologically, is this when this band was over there, is that happening because just plain the upper level instability? Then okay, I see it happening. But if it's there because of convection developing during the heat of the day, I don't think there's going to be enough heating to go on.
I think the biggest takeaway for folks, at least tomorrow, is you are still going to see some rain move through these parts. It might not be nearly as heavy as what we've seen through most of today and even out there still this evening. But just note that, you know, if you do have outdoor plans or you're just, you know, traveling to and from work, still pack the umbrella if you do live in any of those areas.
When we say improving, we're talking in a relative sense.
Yeah.
You know, compared to what we had. And then once you get out to Wednesday morning, now we're talking about 36 hours. And now it really depends on which computer model you look at, right? Like, for instance, the European model, I think, would have this a little farther off to the north. But now even this model, which I believe is based more on the GFS, even this at least is showing the heavy convection offshore.
And again, those northwest winds, maybe some dry air comes down in, really starts to clear a lot of that stuff out.
And also, remember, for those of you over southeastern Georgia, you're really the only ones having a true storm surge of 1 to 4 feet tonight and tomorrow morning. And our main concern is that's getting into the estuaries and then blocks the drainage, like in places like Brunswick. But it looks like you'll have wind coming off the land, even in Brunswick, by 2 tomorrow afternoon. Yeah. So I think that significant ingredient will be out here. I mean, that's one thing that, for those of you new to the area, that's one thing that really helped us along the St. Johns River. We didn't have a storm surge, and so at least the water could drain into the St. Johns.
Yeah.
Versus storms
we don't have
like
that backing up.
Right, Irma or Faye, where it was actually backing up through the drains because of the St. Johns, and then came 10 inches, 20 inches
on top of that. Yeah. So we're just going to break it down county by county. So wherever you live, we're on your side. We got you covered completely here. So if you live in Duval County, Jacksonville area, from now through tomorrow night, at most we're thinking an additional 1, maybe 2 inches max probably.
And wouldn't you agree that probably at least 75% of that is overnight tonight?
Yes, and when I think the high end of that's going to be on the northern extent of the county. So from the airport northward, I think probably has the best chance to see some of those heavier rains. Still will be breezy, sustained winds at 20. We've continued to see wind gusts anywhere from 45 to 55 even up at the airport. So that will still kind of linger around here, you know, through the remainder of this evening and even into the overnight period.
So you folks in St. John's Flagler, you're farther south. Remember, north and east of the circulation is where the winds and rains are heaviest. So that's why we have even less rain there. Still some gusty winds overnight and tonight and tomorrow, but not a problem like for bridges or. And I think that's the headline.
For Clay and Putnam.
Yeah, how much heavy rain has gotten into the watershed of the North and South Creek or forks of the Black Creek.
Yeah, because besides a few light rain showers through the remainder of tonight and maybe even into tomorrow as we get that wraparound effect, not a whole lot more rainfall is expected. in Clay and Putnam. And similar story for what was one of our hardest hit areas out there in Baker and Columbia County. As this thing continues to move off to the east and northeast, really just moving away from any rain chances. So I think less than an inch is really being pretty generous. It could be less than 1/4 of an inch yet.
In fact, if you don't live near a river,
yeah,
considering how hot and humid summer can be, tomorrow might be an actually kind of nice day for a lot of folks.
Now, if you do live by a river.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And we're talking about all the major rivers, certainly the Swanee and then all the other significant rivers, that everything in the ditches and the creeks for the next 24 hours are going to be pouring into those rivers. So we might not even, because the Swanee drains out of the Okefenokee, we may not see a crest like on the Swanee for another 4 to 5 days. But watch that, because especially if the Okefenokee gets another 5 or 10 inches, that's going to be a lot of water coming down the river.
So all the creeks, the streams in those areas have pretty much hit their peak with the heavy rain here today.
Right.
So for folks who live by some of those smaller creeks and streams, they don't have to be as concerned now. It's going to be those big rivers and things like that. Moving further east, we're out towards the coast and the beaches there for Glen, Camden, and Nassau counties. This is really going to be the area we're zoning in on here.
Yeah, tonight.
Overnight and into tomorrow.
Probably first half of tomorrow versus the afternoon, but yeah. Certainly, we just saw Augusta an hour ago in Jekyll Island to 57, so they're certainly still getting that. As long as the wind is coming off the ocean, and that'll happen through tomorrow morning, still getting storm surge. And I think at least another 6 to 10 inches, hopefully not this, but it depends how quick it gets offshore.
And the good news is we do have boots on the ground. We have multiple reporters up there, so they'll have firsthand accounts of what is, transpiring up there through the remainder of tonight and into tomorrow. And then our inland southeast Georgia counties, again, from Nahunta to Waycross, the Folkston area, even an additional 5 to 10 perhaps. This could be lower as well, I think, especially when looking at some of those model runs. But
if we were in school, I would suspect they'd be canceled because a lot of the rural roads, either flooded or impassable.
Yeah.
So what that means, folks, you're well aware of that, but still, especially at night, tonight, I would try to stay off of those roads.
Yeah. Now, how many guys do you think are getting out there in their trucks and doing some mudding here over the next couple of days?
I didn't want to bring it up, but I suspect that.
Have you ever gone mudding, Tim?
I probably still have some inside my brain.
Right. Well, here's just kind of a quick overview of what is left to expect from Tropical Storm Debby. So if you completely zoned us out here the last, 10 or 15 minutes, these are really your biggest takeaways.
This is all that really matters.
Yeah, from tonight, right now, through tomorrow morning and into tomorrow afternoon and evening. So really, the flood risk is going to be the biggest concern. Coastal Georgia counties, Nassau County, and some of our inland Georgia counties from Folkston up through Waycross. Rising rivers for anywhere that has received a lot of heavy rain already. Some of those creeks feeding in, as you've heard Tim mention. And really, it's just going to be a waiting game to see how much more rain does fall in some of these areas.
And I guess I want to add, and maybe this is obvious, but maybe you have some visitors in the area and they're not used to critters that are out in the country. With that high water, a lot of those critters are going to be looking for places they aren't normally at. So be careful if you're going to be, especially with kids out there.
And we do have isolated tornado risk. I do think, and I'm pretty confident in this, I would assume you agree, the heaviest band that's kind of moving through right now, that's about the last of it for the most part. It's not 0% chance of tornadoes, but it's getting pretty close.
Yep, agreed.
So, anything else to add?
Thanks for all your work.
Any wise words? Not for me, for anyone else out there.
Well, I guess if nothing else, for those especially who are new to hurricane country, because we know it's going to be an active season. And hopefully this is it for us, but I'd be kind of surprised. Hopefully this is an example of check back in with the updates, because as much as we want to nail things down, because also we like to plan 4, 5, 6 days ahead just like you do, that things can be very iffy for a while, that we updated our forecast a lot. Now, eventually we got to it and could nail it down. But I guess what I'm trying to mumble through here is I think sometimes folks will check a forecast and then not come back to it for 2 days. And
things change.
With tropical cyclones, yes.
The situation is fluid.
Yes.
Very fluid.
Put well.
Now, I don't have the graphic, but there is another highlighted area from the National Hurricane Center deep in the tropical Atlantic. It's got a low chance of development.
It does, and I probably shouldn't bring this up, but the first model to pick this up and to pick Burl up was the European. And the European is picking up another that hurricane center isn't talking about yet. So not us saying to be stressed out, but things are really just cranking up.
We're getting into the peak part of the season here. What's a peak? The second week of September?
That's the core, but I mean, but at this point I would say, you know, if you're wondering what is the 12-week core, we just had our first week.
Yeah. All right.
I'm ready for dinner.
Me too. All right. Well, we're going to have more information. The 11 p.m. advisory comes out at 11 o'clock, so tune in to us on First Coast News at 11 or on First Coast News Plus. Tim and I are hungry, so we're going to go get something to eat. Take care, guys.